Do you know what's harder than ranking Metallica's best songs? Picking their worst ones. So today, let's do the unthinkable and choose the weakest track from every single Metallica album. Here you go.
Do you want heavy? Metallica gives you heavy, baby!
Now, before the pitchforks come out, I have to point out that I am a huge Metallica fan, and I'm actually one of those weirdos who likes every Metallica album. Yes, every. So making this episode was an absolute torture, especially since in case of each of those albums I simply had to choose one track which, compared to the other songs on the record, was their weakest one, at least to me. Which in most cases does not actually mean that this is a bad song. Although I do understand that you might still absolutely hate me for this episode. But alright, let's do it. Kill 'Em All is one of those rare debut albums where every track became foundational. And not just for Metallica, but for the development of thrash metal overall. And yes, although some of the tracks on it were more groundbreaking than the others, each song from Metallica's debut album, I believe, did play an important role in the development of thrash metal. But if we take a look at the album as a whole, and if we absolutely have to choose one track that feels just a little less essential than the others, for me it would probably be Phantom Lord, as although this song, named after James Hetfield's previous band, definitely does carry that early Metallica rawness and aggression, compared to the other, let's call them underappreciated tracks from Kill 'Em All, such as Metal Militia or Motor Breath. This is actually one of those tracks that could have been much stronger if it would be at least 30 seconds shorter. At the same time, it is actually one of the most fun songs to hear live at every Metallica concert. When it comes to Ride the Lightning, pretty much every regular viewer of this channel knows that I love this album. It is my favorite Metallica record. It was the album with which I got introduced to this band. It was the first ever cassette tape I bought with my own money. It was the album which I listened to on repeat in my Walkman on my way to school for months. And that's why I simply love every song from this record. And choosing the worst one on Ride the Lightning was the hardest one on this list, by far. Even harder than from Metallica's presumably best album ever, Master of Puppets. But given the cruel rules of the game of this video of having to choose one, I would have to go with a song which I actually tend to defend every time I hear a discussion about it. The song which, in all honesty, I don't get what all the hate was ever about, but which, if we are being honest, at least structure-wise, is definitely the weakest one amongst some of the greatest metal songs ever written. The song which was only performed once by Metallica on the occasion when they absolutely had to do it, and which I, in all honesty, would be willing to sacrifice any other song on the setlist to hear at a future Metallica concert.
No one cares, but I'm so much stronger. I'm fighting till the end.
By the way guys, here real quick, just wanted to point out that only around 30% of the people who watch my videos are actually subscribed to the Metal Pilgrim channel. So if you're not one of those, and especially if this is not the first video you're watching on this show, I would really appreciate it if you would consider subscribing right now. Let's continue building this amazing heavy metal community together. Master of Puppets is the quintessential thrash metal album. It is genre-defining and groundbreaking, and therefore, yes, I think most Metallica fans can agree that it has simply no weak tracks on it whatsoever. But here's an interesting thing. If you would have asked me several years ago about which song I would have to pick as the weakest song among the greatest songs ever written on this album, I would most likely have gone with Leper Messiah. Not most likely, I would definitely have gone with Leper Messiah. And this was my belief until I heard that song live for the very first time back in 2019. But hearing that song and screaming every lyric of it, together with thousands of Metallica fans back in, I think it was Madrid in 2019, has completely changed my perception of this track, immediately moving it up the rank, even among the other songs on Master of Puppets. Until today, if I would have to choose the weakest song of it, I would most likely go with Damage Incorporated. Although, here's the thing, it is actually the only song from this album which I have never heard live. And that's why my perception of it can change by our next video. Now, when ranking Injustice for All songs from worst to best, most Metallica fans tend to place either Dyer's Eve or Eye of the Beholder at the very bottom of the list. At least that's the case on most of the Reddit polls. But here's the thing, I could never understand that. Because for me, and I know that it sounds like a blasphemy, but Eye of the Beholder is actually one of my favorite songs on Injustice for All. No, seriously.
Oh my god.
And so when I personally did a very similar exercise ranking all the Injustice for All songs, I found myself placing The Frayed Ends of Sanity below the other tracks on this record. Which, although, yes, I do place it at the bottom, I still have no idea how the flip it took Metallica 25 years to perform it live for the very first time in 2014. As just as it is with every of the 5 Metallica albums, despite it not being the strongest one on this record, it still is an absolute kick-ass banger of a song. And the same goes for Metallica's biggest album ever. Oh no, sorry about that. Metal's biggest album ever. As at least from the comments online, it looks like most Metallica fans, if not all of them, would call Through the Never the weakest song on Black Album. If I would absolutely have to choose one, I would actually go with the album's closing track. Although, here's the thing, even though it is not really my favorite song on this album, I still believe it is definitely the best possible outro for this record. Now, up until this point in the video, I think most Metallica fans might actually agree with my judgment. Which, by the way guys, please do not hesitate to comment on anything you hear or see in this video, and especially if you disagree with me, because the whole point of this video is, of course, to start a conversation. But, alright, nevertheless, with Metallica's 6th studio album Load, we actually enter a twilight zone, which may make our community thorn within, talking about the weakest songs from each of the albums. You see what I did there? But yeah, at least to me, when it comes to Load, although, by the way, I absolutely disagree with any animosity towards this album or Reload, of which we'll talk in a moment, and I'll say a couple of very unpopular opinions about. When it comes to the weakest song from this album, I would actually have to go with Thorn Within. And now, talking about Reload. Well, here's the thing. I simply love this record, and I'm absolutely not ashamed to admit it. Yes, I love all of it, and I actually do return to it and re-listen to it from the very beginning until the very end quite oftenly. Much more often than to some of the classic and best Metallica albums. No, seriously. And yes, hearing Fixer live during Metallica's 40th anniversary shows was actually one of the highlights of my personal Metallica experience. But we all know that one of the biggest criticisms of both Load and Reload is that they simply have too many songs on it. And thus, playing by the rules of this game, if I would have to choose a song which is the closest to a filler, I would have to go to the second to the last track on the album. That one, of course, being Attitude. Although I actually believe that this is actually one of those tracks that has grown on most of Metallica fans quite a lot in the past, more than 25 years now. Now, in this video I'm set to talk only about Metallica's studio albums. Well, Metallica's studio albums with the songs they actually wrote, and thus I believe there's no point in talking about Garage Incorporated and ranking the best or the worst songs they covered throughout their career, or talking about Metallica's S&M with only 2 original tracks on it. Although we all know that one of them is actually one of the best songs Metallica have ever written in their career. And therefore, here is where we come to everyone's beloved Metallica album, St.Anger. The album, which at least to me it was the easiest to choose the weakest track from. As here's the thing, although despite some of its flaws, I actually generally do enjoy most of the songs on St.Anger, and I truly believe that the way Lars Ulrich was able to incorporate the songs from this album on the Metallica setlist in the last couple of years is simply extraordinary, and it actually gives justice to some of the tracks from this 2003 record. At least to me, the absolute weakest song from St.Anger is the track Purify. I'll even say more. This actually might be the only Metallica song in their entire discography that I don't really like at all. Oh, and by the way, it also happens to be the only Metallica song with less than 1 million plays on YouTube. Now, before making this video, I never actually thought that choosing the weakest track from Death Magnetic would be that hard of a task. No, seriously, it almost feels unfair to this record. As the thing is that it might actually be one of the most consistent Metallica albums front to back. And now, I want to make clear, I'm not saying that this is the best Metallica album, I'm just saying that each song on this album is equally as strong as the other one. And although, of course, it does have a couple of everyone's favorite tracks, choosing the weakest one on it was merely impossible task. No, seriously, I was this close to actually flipping a coin in order to decide which one I would have to name as such. I didn't. And thus, in order to make this decision, I actually tried to go through the structure and composition of each of the tracks on this album. And to my deepest regret, I actually would have to name the Judas Kiss as the weakest song on this album. Which the truth is that before making this exercise, I never actually thought that I would, because the lyrics of this track actually do resonate with me quite a lot. And it always is a song which I am very happy to hear whenever it pops up in my playlist. The next album in Metallica's discography, yes, the next album in Metallica's discography. There was nothing that this band released in between those two records. Remember that. Although pretty much everyone I know would name the songs Mankind or Am I a Savage as the absolute weakest tracks from Hardwired to Self-Destruct, I actually would have to go with a different track. The track which I personally was actually waiting for the most on this album. The tribute to the legendary Lemmy Kilmister. As the thing is that I think most people know that I am actually a huge Motorhead fan. And given the whole fact that Metallica was vastly inspired by Lemmy and Motorhead, and especially in their early days, I was actually really looking forward to a tribute to the legendary Lemmy, which Metallica was supposed to make on their next studio record after the tragic events of 2015. But the thing is, and I know that it might sound like a blasphemy and many of you might hate me for this comment, but I actually think that Murder One was unnecessarily slow, specifically as a tribute to Lemmy. And they would actually have be much better off if they would have made a cover which would be done in the spirit of the early Motorhead, which was so inspirational for early Metallica, as this would both honor their legacy and its connection with the legendary Motorhead. And therefore, at least to me, although Murder One might actually be a good song, actually no matter how great it actually is, it's still kind of hard to match this song's mood with its content, and therefore I would actually have to name it as the weakest one on this album, although it might not actually be such. Thus we come to the band's latest studio output, at least for now. And here's the thing, this album is still rather fresh, and therefore I have to be honest with you that my opinion might actually change a couple of months from now. It actually did in the last 2 years quite a lot, as it is one of those albums that has grown quite a lot on me, and especially after Metallica started releasing the live renditions of the songs from it. And the more of those I started to see online, the more my perception of each of those tracks has actually changed throughout those 2 years. But at least as of right now, I actually think that I made a full circle, and I would have to name Chasing Light as not really the weakest, but possibly my least favorite song on 72 Seasons. At least as of today. Although, once again, it might actually change tomorrow completely. But nevertheless, that's it! It's out in the open, and now I have only one request to you all. please don't hate me for this video. But instead, please let us know which songs I missed and which songs I completely misjudged in the comments. I'm actually really curious to find out. And also, which band should we do such exercise with next? But nevertheless, thank you so much for watching this video, guys, and we will prevail. Slava Ukraini!